birth mother tried to kidnap me. The story I'm about to tell you is very difficult for me. It has never been told in its entirety. Although I have shared bits and pieces with certain people, I am going to use a throwaway account for what should become obvious reasons. I am willing to verify as much as I can with the mods through private message. I guess I should start at the beginning. That's usually a good place. I am a female, now 32. I am adopted. There were 6 kids born to my birth mom, Jane. I know very little about my older siblings, other than what was told by family and friends of the family. The first was taken at a young age, possibly birth, and adopted out due to Jane's inability to care for her. I do not know who the father was. We did meet her once, about 17 years ago. Jane served time in prison after neglecting the next 2 so badly that they died. She was convicted of manslaughter. I don't know how many years she was in, but after she got out, she met my father, Dale, who was at least 10 years younger than her. She was apparently still married to her first husband when I was born, as his name was on my birth certificate, even though he was never legally considered my father. My brother Eugene was born nearly 2 years later. Obviously, social services was watching her very closely. It didn't take them long to realize that she hadn't magically acquired a mother's instinct while in prison. I don't know what Dale was thinking getting involved with her, but I do know that he cared about us and loved us deeply. He struggled to provide for us while Jane stayed at home and did whatever she did. We were often left in our own filth and given very little to or nothing to eat. When Jane visited family and friends, we were handed off to them to be changed, cleaned, and fed. Like she expected everyone but her to care for her children. Social services removed us from the home multiple times, only to return us because Dale promised them that he would make everything work. At some point during this whole ordeal, Jane hooked up with John, who she says was Dale's best friend. I was very young at the time, so all I remember is a man coming over while Dale was away. And there was a sense of wrongness to him. Eugene remembers even less, more a negative air to the place we used to live. I also remember John had an insect tattoo on a visible part of his body. To this day, I hate that insect as a tattoo. Somehow, it was discovered that she was with John. I don't know what Dale's reaction to it was. I do know that social services immediately put their foot down and said she could not have him around her children. Apparently, he had a reputation with children and could not be trusted. Instead of kicking her lover out, Jane left with him and moved across the country. While I am lucky enough not to remember anything, I showed signs of having been severely molested as a child. I won't go into details here, other than to say that it's very likely that Jane was aware, and even more likely that John was the culprit. With no one to care for his children, and not making enough to afford childcare, Dale struggled for a while before deciding to give us up to a family he knew as good people, before the state could split us up. Jane had already lost custody and parental rights, so Dale signed everything he could. Jane was still legally our mother, so he was unable to adopt us out over to the couple when we were 5 and 3, trusting that we would be in good hands. He stayed in touch and sent gifts, visiting on rare occasions he could afford to travel. When my parents were in the area, they made sure he knew so he could see us. We hadn't heard from Jane in a while, when all of a sudden, shortly before my 8th birthday, she showed up one day at my new house. There were no legal restrictions about her seeing me, but my parents were on guard. This grew on a massive scale when she announced that her and John, who was now married to and pregnant by, were moving into the area. This triggered the scariest period of my childhood. They began to try to separate Eugene and me from our parents. In their minds, if we weren't with our parents, we would be returned to Jane. Never mind that she had already been proven unfit. In their eyes, it was a foolproof plan. Initially, they began to spread rumors of abuse and mishandling. They called social services and made false claims. They lied to friends of the family. When this didn't work, they started actively trying to kidnap us. My parents were upfront with us about what was going on. They believed if we knew the truth, we could better protect ourselves. We were always with a member of the family. They let Jane see us, but never alone. Someone was always there in the same room. My family was told by people who were familiar with Jane that they wanted us for the welfare check. For my 8th birthday, John walked up to my father and stated that he and Jane were going to be taking Eugene and me out for ice cream. My father refused, saying that they always made birthdays a family affair, and that Jane and John were welcome to come over and join us. John later told a friend of our family that he was so angry if Eugene and I hadn't been standing right there watching, he would have punched my father. After this, I believe they started watching the house, waiting for my parents to leave. I think they knew that my parents sometimes allowed an older sibling to sit us, and that they could overpower a young teenager. We lived in a safe neighborhood, rural area where we didn't have any close neighbors. The mentality was that every homeowner owned guns and handled issues themselves. I remember hiding in one of the bedrooms with Eugene while they walked around the outside of the house, hammering on the doors and windows. Our older foster brother looked at us with a rifle cocked across his arm and told us, "I know she's your mom, but if they come through that door, I'm shooting them." After they lost custody of their child due to neglect, they broke up and went their separate ways, leaving the state. The stalking stopped. We were allowed to grow up in peace, seeing Jane only occasionally when we visited her state to see other family members. When I was 14, Jane called me, crying, saying she had decided to sign the adoption papers. She had finally given up on getting us back. John's grandmother got custody of their child, Ryan. She did right by him, but when he was 11 and I was 19, he was killed in a car accident. His grandma requested that I sing at his funeral. Both Jane and John were there. John was not sitting with the rest of the group, but he was off to the side and had a man with him. As we were leaving to go to the gravesite, John stood by the doorway and grabbed me on my way out. He tried to pull me into a hug, crying about how he had missed you kids. I stood still for a split second, stunned, before pulling away. At the same time I drew back, the man with him firmly grasped his upper arm and pulled him back. After I got home, it began to bother me that John was still out there. I wondered how much, if anything, had been documented of his behavior with me or other children. I looked him up online and found that he was a registered sex offender, but not for what he had done to me. He was listed as having sexual contact with a child under 13 as recently as 2005, 4 years after I had seen him at the funeral. Recently, I had asked Dale's mother, with whom I had stayed in touch off and on throughout the years, what she knew about it. She said that she knew John and Jane had wanted to make money off of me, and that is why they wanted me back, specifically me. At this time, I had been told and believed they wanted both Eugene and me for benefit reasons. Now I'm not so sure we had the story right. How are you, Jessica? I'm your real mom. Hello. Let me start by saying that my biological mother hasn't been in my life. She abandoned us when I was 2 years old to marry some rich old dude in California. I have a stepmother with my dad, however, who has been with me since I was 4. And my stepmother is the only one I call mom and who I love and respect as if she was my real mother. Anyways, my weird encounter takes place in South Florida in the late 90s. It was Mother's Day. I was around 9 or 10 years old. I remember everything as if it happened yesterday. I was outside riding my bike with a friend around our quiet suburban neighborhood when I heard someone calling my name. It comes from a blue car that had been parked there for hours. I hadn't even noticed there were people inside since it had tinted windows and it hadn't moved the whole time we were outside. Jessica! Jessica, come here! I'm still on my bike, so I go to the driver's side and the window rolls down. It's a woman, a blonde, short-haired, a woman wearing sunglasses. She asks me if I know who she is, and I tell her no. And she says, "I'm your mother, Jessica. How are you?" At that moment, I remember being paralyzed, as if time had frozen and I was in a parallel world. I just remember being shocked beyond words. Mind you, I had never seen a photo of my biological mother up to that point. I was aware that my stepmother wasn't my real mother, so I knew I had a mother out there. But I never knew what she looked like and, quite frankly, didn't care. So there's this woman telling me that she's my real mom, to get in the car with her, that we'll go to get ice cream and do girly things. I look at my friend, who's on her little pink bike on the other side of the street, looking at me utterly confused. I tell this lady that I have to tell my dad, and as I pulled away from the car, I noticed that she's getting out and opening the door, telling me something along the lines of, "No, wait, no, come here." So I go away, kind of scared at this point, pedaling as fast as I can to get to my house, which was like 5 or 6 houses down that road. I think I even felt her hands trying to grab me as I was speeding away, but I can't fully recall that. "Jessica! Jessica!" I could hear in the back, this crazy-ass lady standing on the middle of the street screaming my name. I tell my dad, he freaks out. Cops are called. The car is long gone. I'm asking to describe this woman and the car. It doesn't seem to match with anyone my dad or my stepmom knew. We were new in the neighborhood as well, and nobody knew that my stepmother wasn't my biological mother, so really, what the hell was that? Fast forward to 2010, with the help of my dad, I get in touch with my biological mother through Facebook. We meet up. She looks nothing like this woman. Long black hair, tan skin, different features, a different person, no doubt about it. I mentioned this incident to her. She seemed shocked and genuinely worried. She even has the cold blood to tell me that it wasn't her, that she never even attempted to contact me or sent anyone to get me. She even suggested that it might have been a product of my imagination, perhaps, asking me if I was sure this woman said to be my real mother, as if the whole exchange I had with this stranger wasn't precisely about that. Of course, the lady told me she was my real mother. Even my friend heard it. "Sorry, Mom, but I never needed you enough to randomly imagine you on Mother's Day trying to kidnap me. I had a real mom. Thank you very much." So who knows? I guess I'll never find out. My best guess is someone close to my parents who knew about the situation and saw it as an easy way for child abduction. But I refuse to believe either my dad or my stepmom knows someone that fucked up. Whatever the case is, this person knew my name and my background and still does. And is still out there. I try not to think about it too much, but when I do, it fills me with terror.